Today I have set up 3 reading activities and listening skills, one for math and reading and an additional activity that I will briefly explain. For the math, I have chosen Arctic Fives Arrive, and I have placed questions throughout at the beginning, the middle, and the ending of the story to help prompt the children into discussion and follow along with the story. When prompted, throughout the story and by me, children will then count by fives when indicated in the book. They will count by fives using these counting markers. They're little fuzzy blue balls, and each child will receive 6. We'll be counting to 30, so that's 5 times 6 will be 30. So the book that we'll be reading is Arctic Fives Arrive by Eleanor J. Pinskys, illustrated by Holly Berry. And the first question before we begin the story is, what is counting by fives? I'd give the children about 2 minutes to read and discuss the question amongst themselves. And then now begin an excerpt of the story. One late Arctic day, not too far from the bay, 5 snowy owls gracefully flew. They spotted a mound, the tallest around, where small birds could have a nice view. Deciding to light, the owls circled right, while making one final survey. It looked like a place with plenty of space, for the animals headed their way. The 5 snowy owls, all fine-feathered fowls, were peacefully taking their rest. But hoots filled the air as up popped 5 bears to join them on top the hill crest. Those bears were delighted, but far too excited. Each howl hip-hopped out of harm's way. The bears rubbed their jaws and licked their icy paws. Once groomed, the bears planned to stay. The owls wondered then if the rest would fit. Counting by 5, that's 5, 10. 5 polar bears on pigeon-toed paws, and 5 snowy owls with long, curvy claws. So at this point, the children should have counted at least 2 of the counting markers, so that makes 10. And we would go through them together now and do 5, 10. The bears settled down as the owls looked around and spied Emir making the climb. From 10 occupants came a series of grunts when they shifted themselves one more time. Tiny ears twitched and long whiskers switched on the Emir surveying the view, all anticipating while contemplating if others would climb the hill too. Counting by 5, that's 5, 10, 15. So we should have 15 counters now. 5 sly Emir, all pop-eyed and lean. 5 polar bears on pigeon-toed paws, and 5 snowy owls with long, curvy claws. So then I would reiterate with the question, how many animals are there now? Another good question would be, how many animals do you think we will have by the end? So continuing the story. 15 restless critters, all with the jitters, felt something huge quaking the ground. They heard walrus clapping and tails, fins a-flapping. They knew who'd be next on the mound. Each animal lifted, then suddenly shifted as fat walrus rumbled their way. The 5 shut their eyes and heaved heavy sighs because of the weight pulled that day. 5, 10, 15, and 20. 5 fat walruses with tusks sharpened keen, 5 sly men, all pop-eyed and lean, 5 polar bears, all pigeon-toed paws, and 5 snowy owls with long, curvy claws. 20 animals, now all fitting somehow, saw Arctic hares thump the packed snow. They must move again for the hares to fit in, though there wasn't much space left to go. The pert Arctic hares all wiggled their ears, still numb from the chill of the day. Pleased to be there, with time yet to spare, the hares nimbly squeezed in to stay. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5 Arctic hares whose ears dip and dive, 5 fat walrus with tusks sharpened keen, 5 sly airmen, all pop-eyed and lean, 5 polar bears, all pigeon-toed paws, and 5 snowy owls with long, curvy claws. Suspense filled the air. Then out of nowhere came musk oxen stumbling topside. 25 shuffled to make room. They scuffled, for the new guys seemed overly wide. The oxen looked beat when they stamped their feet. Snow spattered the entire throng. Once wedged into place, they stared into space and hoped no one else came along. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. 5 musk oxen who timely arrive, 5 Arctic hares whose ears dip and dive, 5 fat walrus with tusks sharpen keen, 5 sly men, all pop-eyed and lean, 5 polar bears on pigeon-toed paws, and 5 snowy owls with long, curvy claws. The white Arctic hares hip-hopped everywhere, excited to get underway. Each fat walrus clamped, all 5 emirs yamped, and the polar bear started to sway. Then sheer energy from electricity was felt in the heart of each beast. There was snowy owls, whoos, and musk oxen's moos, as a rainbow of hues flickered east. A soft, frosty glow slowly covered the snow. While the bright colors lit the dim night, they all came to see a great mystery, the phenomenon called Northern Lights. Their order reversed, the watchers dispersed. 30, 25, 15, 10, and 5. The small Snowy owls, all scattered fowls, were last since the first to arrive. The owls flying high in a dark Arctic sky were pleased with their choice for the show. Perhaps one day, at another display, they would gather again in the snow. The end. And the last question, or questions, would be, how many times did we count by fives to reach the number 30? And a clue or prompt would be, what does 5 times 6 equal? So this is a more advanced math lesson, and the children are learning their multiples. So counting by fives and counting how many times they counted fives will help them associate this with multiplication. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And then at the end, we would also practice what was on the last page, which was counting backwards. 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. So that concludes counting by fives with the Arctic Fives Arrive. And then the next story and activity that we have would be practicing their vocabulary listening skills with the rainbow fish. And while reading the rainbow fish, every single time they hear the word scales, each child would lift up their scale that they have and show it to one another and the teacher that is reading. So we'll just go over the first couple of times that scales is repeated and shown in the story. The Rainbow Fish by Marcus Pfister. Illustrated by J. Allison James. A long way out in the deep blue sea, there lived a fish, not just an ordinary fish, but the most beautiful fish in the entire ocean. His scales were every shade of blue and green and purple, with sparkling silver scales among them. So lift up the scale. All the children, lift up the scale. The other fish were amazed at his beauty. They called him Rainbow Fish. Come on, Rainbow Fish, they would call. Come and play with us. But the Rainbow Fish would just glide past, proud and silent, letting his scales shimmer. So lift up the scale. One day, a little blue fish followed after him. Rainbow Fish, he called, wait for me. Please give me one of your shiny scales. They are so wonderful, and you have so many. You want me to give you one of my special scales? Who do you think you are? Cried the Rainbow Fish. Get away from me. Shocked, the little blue fish swam away. He was so upset he told all his friends what had happened. From then on, no one would have anything to do with the Rainbow Fish. They turned away when he swam by. So sorry to leave you at the climax of the story, but we'll be moving on to our next activity. I'll briefly explain this one. This book is called Miss Spider's Tea Party by David Kirk. And it's also illustrated by David Kirk. Now, this activity is another reading activity, and it's about this spider who wants to have a tea party with her insect friends, but, well, she's a spider and they're insects, so the insects are very scared of her. So every single time there's mentioned tea in the book, the children will take their teacup or representation of a teacup and take a drink. So we'll read until the first example. One lonely spider sipped her tea while gazing at the sky. She watched the insects on the leaves and many flying by. If I had friends like these, she sighed, who'd stay a while with me, I'd sit them down on silken chairs and serve them cakes and tea. So that's the basic outcome of this activity. The children have to pay attention and listen and have a little sip from their teacups while we're all pretending have a tea party with Miss Spider.